What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. I'm Kathy Beal, welcoming you to Celestial Compass. I'm going to start with, as usual, a brief update of the astrological weather at the end of August 2025, which has a number of openings of invitations for you to do things differently. On the 22nd or the 23rd, depending on where you are on the planet, we have a very unusual new moon in Gemini, which is wired for change. It's in an action-demanding aspect to the quick change artist Uranus, and these fresh starts, new beginnings they invite not just thinking outside the box, but basically blowing up the box and making up a new game plan all together. So be thinking about how you're going to come up with new habits and new ways of running your life, your daily life management in particular, to match the changing circumstances of the outer world. And after that, Venus, the social director of the skies, is going to move into the sign of Leo, which is a very happy place for her. It's going to encourage us to spend a lot of time with each other, to strut, to dress up, to basically have a good time, get out of the kitchen, get out of comfort food mode and into showing off mode. And she continues the theme of doing things differently, of going for what you want, with the general idea of, if not now, when. And that will then lead us into the eclipses of September, but those are another story. For more about all this, you'll find my forecasts at omtimes.com, and also with my weekly podcast at my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and my YouTube channel, Professional Aquarian. So we're going into a very interesting fall. It's been an uncommon summer. Think of what you'd like to shake up in your life and consider the possibility that this is the time to do it. And now I am very happy to introduce our guest. We're taking a much more technical and scientific approach to astrology this time around with Christopher Benton. He has a great passion for mathematics, ancient wisdom, and mundane astrology. He has a doctorate in mathematics, and he's worked as a statistical consultant for the state of Texas. But no, we did not know each other there. He's also taught college-level mathematics, including statistics, abstract algebra, and multivariable calculus for 38 years, worked as the director of institutional effectiveness and research for his college for 6 years, and he's a past president of the Texas Association for Institutional Research. In true Gemini fashion, he's gone through several life adventures, including dancing in a musical with Ginger Rogers, being a hippie in Austin, Texas in the 1970s, having a roommate who was a full-blood Kiowa medicine man, and studying rabbinic literature with a renowned Talmudic scholar. He's also a board member of the Cosmobiology Institute, where he additionally serves as international research coordinator. His goal is to expand the scope of scientific evidence and understanding of evidence-based astrology until it is again recognized as a serious scientific discipline. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So could you give us a little more about your background apart from the astrological part, so we can have the framework that we can put that one into.
Well, I think you covered it pretty much. I'm both an astrologer doing mundane astrology and scientific statistical research into astrology, but then I'm also a serious mathematician, doing pure mathematics, a lot of theorem proving, uh, and I try and blend these two loves of mine together, the mathematics, statistics, and the astrology.
So then how did you come to astrology? Which came first? Were you a technical little nerd head and then you stumbled into astrology, or did you just see the star scrolls in the grocery store in the 70s, or what?
Yeah, it's actually, I think I came to both of them in the first grade as
Oh
soon
my.
as I learned how to read. Yeah, it's when I learned how to read in the first grade, well, my parents, they just had all sorts of interesting books and magazines lying around the house that had articles on, you know, meditation, Eastern philosophy, astrology, palmistry, psychic experiences. So, I developed an interest in that immediately as I read about those things because I've always been interested in psychology and that question of, who am I and what's my path in life going to be? At the same time, in the first grade, we would have little spelling tests and arithmetic tests every day over the homework. And after a few of those, it suddenly dawned upon me uh, that if I just studied the spelling words and worked on the math problems the night before, I could make 100 on every test.
Oh,
And I might point out that a lot of kids become afraid of mathematics in elementary school. The only reason I didn't was because I was kind of slow. I was too stupid to realize that math was supposed to be hard. It's just my parents told me, go do your homework, solve these problems. So I did. And it paid off later in life.
so how did you actually study astrology? And it's one thing to see cool articles when you're a kid, but what was your path to mastering it?
Um, well, you mentioned the little scrolls that have your
Uh-huh.
horoscope in it. And that's something, every year when I was in elementary school, we would go up to from Texas to Oklahoma to visit my grandparents and my aunts. And along the way, there was some place we always stopped off where there's a little machine you could get those astrology scrolls out of. So that fed my interest, but I didn't know how to cast a chart. That didn't come until 1970 when I started college at the University of Houston. And that same year, there was this wonderful bookstore that opened up in Houston, Texas called the Aquarian Age Bookshelf.
Oh, I took my first classes there.
Yeah. And, it was wonderful. Suddenly, this was also a time when there was this renewed interest in astrology and a
Uh-huh.
lot of books being published in astrology. And I went there. One of the first books I bought was the old Llewellyn's A to Z Astrology and Horoscope Maker. And at Aquarian Age Bookshelf, you could also buy uh, those ephemerides and charts that the Rosicrucians would put out. And
Mhm.
on the back of each blank chart, it had the instructions for putting in all the information from your ephemeris. And then you would have to do some logarithms, which, since I was a mathematician, I love doing logarithms. And so I began casting charts back in 1970. And I never worked professionally as an astrologer per se, but I always did, my horoscope, the horoscopes of family members and friends. And one of the things, in the early days, I would ask myself, is this really working, or am I just talking myself into it? What they called the Barnum effect. But what really convinced me that astrology actually works is synastry.
Hmm.
Because it's, I can read an astrological description which says, oh my goodness, you're Gemini, you have, you know, Taurus rising, Moon in Taurus, Venus in Taurus. You're obviously highly intelligent, very handsome, and of course, it's easy for me to accept that, even if it's not true. But the one thing you can't fake are your relationships with other people. Most of our relationships are, average relationships. With most people, we get along with them a little bit in certain ways and not so well in other ways. But every now and then, we come across some people we're really attracted to, some people we uh, just really harmonize with. And then there are other people you come across that no matter how hard you try, you just can't make it work. You can't get along with them. Everything's always wrong. And you see those things so often when you do the synastry comparison between the two charts. And I knew that's something I can't fake.
Mm.
That's something that's not going to be the Barnum effect, something you just talk yourself into. You either get along really well with certain people or you get along horribly with certain people. And all of that is shown in the synastry, the aspect comparison between those two charts.
Well, how is it that you have harmonized these two fields of being, the mathematics slash statistics and astrology?
Uh, a line from Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass immediately comes to mind. In the poem, epic poem Song of Myself, at one point, he says, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. So, I am open to all sorts of possibilities. And astrology is very interesting because with large databases and computer technology that are now becoming readily available, we're able to find all kinds of statistical evidence that a lot of things in astrology work. We also find that some things that astrologers may believe don't necessarily work so well, but a lot of things do work. But at the same time, why does it work? We don't yet have a good explanation as to why it works. And there are all sorts of different theories. Some some physicists I know believe, who are also astrologers, PhD physicists, who are astrologers, they will look for explanations in conventional physics. Uh,
Mm.
Things like gravity, which can exert influences over long distances, or even plasma streams, this fourth state of matter that can travel vast distances in outer space. As a mathematician, I look for mathematical explanations too. It's quite possible that it's the mathematics behind both us and the universe creates similar patterns, as we say, above and below. And
Mhm.
so it could be simply that astrology works because the same mathematics, which is creating the cycles that govern the planets, also create similar cycles in our own lives. And so, astrology can be sort of a timer for events without directly causing those events.
So I'm going to jump ahead to what's going on currently, since you're talking about cycles. Now, you and I have both done a lot of research about what has happened historically
Yeah.
when one particular thing that's going on now has happened. And we met in a presentation that I was giving on that, and you had a fascinating piece of information that you had come up with. So, and this has to do with Saturn and Neptune meeting in the sign of Aries, which they almost did exactly in July, and they will exactly at the end of February next year. You have some high-level observations about what these two titans do when they travel together?
Oh,
Based on
I've got a lot of observations. Is this a 1 week show?
right? Yeah, I have a bunch too. That's why I said high level.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very interesting. Um, we have a lot of historical information that helps confirm our expectations for what happens when Saturn and Neptune come into conjunction. And if we think about it, Saturn represents structure. Neptune dissolves structure and boundaries. And whenever they come into conjunction, typically a lot of old structures will dissolve. That's what happens when Neptune gets the upper hand. Sometimes Saturn tries to get the upper hand, and it will try and hold on to those structures. And so while structures are dissolving at the same time, we can have governments or other entities that are, trying to impose harder rules and restrictions on people, oppression on people. But then we also have moments when Saturn and Neptune work together, coordinate together to produce a new vision to replace all those old visions and old structures that are dissolving. Well, I should point out that those new visions, they're not necessarily good visions, they're simply new. The new vision could be a good vision or it could be a bad vision. And Russia in particular has a long history of responding to these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, which happen about every 36 years. And there was one in 1917, and the new vision at that time was the Bolshevik Revolution and the ascendance of communism. And historically, that turned out not to be such a good vision. There was another conjunction back in 1989. That was the previous conjunction. And in that year, we literally saw the structure of the Berlin Wall dissolve before our very eyes. But there were other changes going on around the world at the same time. Well, I should also point out that the new vision became more democracy around the world. But as Saturn and Neptune came into conjunction in 89, a lot of the communist countries in Eastern Europe began to reject communism, broke away from the Soviet Union, adopted democratic principles. And of course, the Berlin Wall came down. But that was also the year that saw that famous rebellion and protest in Tiananmen Square in China. And the students were trying to bring forth a new vision, but that was the Neptune part. But Saturn kicked in, and the military forces came into Tiananmen Square. There's a famous picture of a student standing up, I think holding a flower, maybe even in front of one of those big, powerful tanks. We also, well, even though the protests were suppressed, Deng Xiaoping, he adopted more democratic principles in China afterwards. They went on this path of we'll be communist in government, but capitalist and more democratic when it comes to business. And then also apartheid was dismantled in South Africa that year. So we get all these big social changes whenever these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions arrive. Old structures dissolve, new visions arise. And like I say, sometimes they're really good visions, but they could also be bad visions.
Interestingly, they can also, if we take it way back, this conjunction seems to be associated with what I see, the rise of democratic principles, not just with the countries that broke away from the USSR, but throughout history. And could we put the first slide up, please? So you had discovered that that the very first one of the conjunctions that you could find during history is really close to where next February's one is going to be, and the one on the right is 4361 before Christ, BCE, before the Christian era,
or before the common era.
A common era. Okay, whatever. I'm sure I don't know what the terminology is now. And the one on the left is what's coming in February. So, what do you associate with that first conjunction at the Aries point, at 0 Aries?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Aries point, because there's several reasons to believe that this conjunction is going to be even more momentous than other conjunctions we've experienced, in the 20th century. And one of the reasons is because this is happening on what some call a world axis point within the first degree of a cardinal sign. And that makes it just by itself much more powerful. And with this conjunction occurring in Aries, I also anticipate that there's going to be a lot of emphasis on individual action and independence. But I was curious about, how often do we get a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in the first degree of Aries? And exploring on my own and also using artificial intelligence to confirm it, the previous time that we had a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in the first degree of Aries was in the year 4361 BCE. BCE, that's something, before Christ. BC, that's, that pertains specifically to Christianity. So that's why some people have just adopted BCE for before Common Era instead of BC, Common Era CE instead of AD. It's just a convention you'll find used a lot, but so that's just to explain it to people.
Well,
but anyway,
what happened around this time? This is before recorded history, isn't it?
Yes, this was the beginning of recorded history. It was about around this time that historians call this the dawn of civilization, because it was around this time that writing began to be invented and calendar systems began to be invented, and people began to record their history. This is roughly the time when humankind made a big evolutionary leap and a big leap forward in civilization. And so we're repeating something that hasn't occurred for about 6,000 years. So I see this as the end of one 6,000 year cycle and the beginning of another 6,000 year cycle. And so this, as I say, this is not your parents' Saturn-Neptune conjunction. It's not your grandparents' Saturn-Neptune conjunction. This is the start of what could be another 6,000 year cycle. And if humanity continues, then we might see another big evolutionary leap forward.
One astrologer I know has referred to this as the rebirth of civilization.
That's a good way to describe it. Worst case scenario would be the end of civilization. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're more likely to move forward. But anytime there's a big change, it can be a rough road at first.
And just to go back, well, You and I have both charted when these two planets have been traveling together, mostly in other signs. There aren't too many instances of them being conjunct in the sign of Aries. But this corresponds with habeas corpus, with Magna Carta, with democracy being started in Athens. I'm going to go on a limb and say the auspices are pretty decent for a reboot that puts the individual more forward. Although I just noticed Saturn is just barely, well, they're at exactly the same minute, huh? Saturn's just barely ahead of Neptune next year, when the first time around Neptune was just barely ahead of Saturn. That
Well,
might be.
yeah, I don't know. I think that's just the way it's drawn.
Okay.
Yeah, I use my software to get an exact conjunction. So they should be at the same place, and the software I'm using, they should be exact down to the second, even though it's displayed to the minute. But I think you hit the nail on the head with those examples you gave and what you said about Aries. I think when you talk about habeas corpus and the Magna Carta, a lot of these things have to do with the rights of the individual.
Right.
And so I think that is coming to the forefront. And this summer we don't have the exact conjunction between Saturn and Neptune, but they have been within 1 degree orb of one another all summer long.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting a really good preview of what we might expect next year when we get the exact conjunction. And this summer, Saturn and Neptune, as I say, they just dip their toe into Aries. I won't call it the ocean, but maybe the desert would be a better metaphor for Aries. And early in July, they both started moving retrograde. So they dipped their toe into Aries and said, okay, we need to slow down and think about this a bit. and
with that, we're going to take our break. So everybody hang on. We'll be back.
Om Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with astrologer, mathematician Christopher Benton, and we have up on the screen well, we had up on the screen, 2 charts showing Saturn and Neptune meeting at the very beginning of Aries. One, the earliest one that Christopher's found, and one being what we're going to have next February. And before we move on, I am curious if there's anything else about comparing this this time from 4,361, 436461 before Common Era and what's coming up next February. Is there anything else you'd like to comment about this chart?
Well, not about that chart, but could I make a quick comment about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto?
I was going to ask. So there's been a dance going on with the chart on the left all summer long.
Right. It's we're experiencing very strongly now what some call a minor grand trine, what astrologer Rick Levine calls a mini grand trine, what others call a double sextile trine. We have Uranus in Gemini, sextile Neptune in Uranus in Aries, which is sextile Pluto in Aquarius, which is making a trine to Uranus back in Gemini, and that configuration is going to be strong off and on for the next 4 years. And it's going to be dancing with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. What it is doing, it's bringing in, it's causing everyone's mind to expand a bit. Everyone is going to be opening up a bit to new perspectives, new ways of looking at things. Some people are going to make tremendous spiritual progress at this time. With Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, we're seeing all sorts of technological innovations and inventions on steroids. It's just happening so rapidly. And the last time something like this was happening, it was several hundred years BCE, when there was a series of conjunctions between those outer planets, and the result was all sorts of new religions and philosophies. The golden age of Greek philosophy, the writing of the Torah, Taoism, Confucianism, writing of some of the Upanishads. And so, that too says that we're on the precipice of great changes. And the last time we had this kind of configuration between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that lasted for several years it began in the year 476 of the Common Era, AD, and that was the year that the Roman Empire fell and the Middle Ages began. So 2 very rare astrological things happening around the same time. And both of them indicate we're on the verge, on the cusp of something very new in this world.
And you pointed out that there's a solar eclipse in February, a couple of days before this first exact Saturn-Neptune conjunction occurs. Could we have the second slide, please? This solar eclipse is going to occur in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, currently in a sextile to Saturn-Neptune, and Aquarius is the sign where Pluto currently is, and that's also sextiling Saturn and Neptune. So I'm just curious, what do you see happening in this eclipse? And do you think it's significant that the sign involves the 2 outer planets that are sextiling Saturn and Neptune?
Yeah, I do. And to me, this is simply adding more fuel to the fire. Eclipses occur when the sun and moon are getting, you have either a new moon or full moon occurring close to the lunar nodal axis. And the lunar nodal axis always intensifies things. This solar eclipse is happening just 3 days before the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. So Saturn and Neptune, they're already very closely conjunct. This is just going to intensify that conjunction and the aftermath. It's almost, just having this being the first conjunction at the start of Aries that has happened in 6,000 years, that by itself would tell you that this is a big turning point. But the solar eclipse happening just right before that conjunction, it's going to intensify it even more. And we also have Chiron and Eris conjunct during the solar eclipse. That suggests that there may be some strife and wounding in the months following the exact conjunction. And Uranus is making a very strong square to that Sun-Moon conjunction at this time. So that is another indication that things are going to be shaken up next year. But we also have something very momentous happening within a month or two after the conjunction. In March and April, both Saturn and Neptune are going to cross the celestial equator. They're going to move from southern declination to northern declination. And whenever outer planets like that cross the celestial equator, that is also an indication that big changes in a society are about to happen. It's always hard to know exactly what's going to happen until you get there, but we see the signs. We see things changing quite a bit now.
What do you make of the fact that Venus is exactly conjunct the North Node in this solar eclipse chart? Anything?
Well, that is going to intensify things related to Venus a lot. And Venus, we usually associate it with pleasure and things we like, romance. The things that we like in this world, things we like, we usually tend to say, that's something that's good. Things we don't like, we say, that's bad. And so what we like and what we don't like, which we get through Venus, that helps create our value system. And I think of Venus as also associated with our right nonverbal brain, which creates sort of this view of reality based upon what we like and what we don't like. So with Venus conjunct that lunar nodal axis, our right brains are going to be stimulated. Exactly how that is going to play out, I'm not exactly sure, but we may feel dissatisfaction with things in some way, for instance, because it's our values, our nonverbal brain, which is being stimulated. So it's all going to be about, do we like what's going on or do we not like what's going on?
There could be a real strong, like poetry, music, empathy, because Venus is said to be exalted in Pisces, so there could be a real being guided by love, essentially. This is with the Piscean North Node. This is the way, we're all in it together. And I don't know. I personally see a lot of very positive possibilities in this, but I also have a 29-degree Jupiter. So
yeah, I think those are definite possibilities you mentioned. And I would also point out that a lot of times when we get social changes, they often appear first in the media and in music, because those mediums can respond very rapidly to shifts in energy.
Okay, I think we can take this slide down now, please. Thank you. So, and that slide too. Yeah.
Hey, I'm back.
You are back. So, massive gear shift. So bringing this into how you combine the statistical / mathematical streak or bent to all of this. So it's not just looking at the cycles, but there are other statistical correlations. And how does cosmobiology fit into that?
Well, the Cosmobiology Institute was started a couple of years ago by a famous astrologer, David Cochran. He is the person who created Kepler, Pegasus, and Sirius software. He's past president of ESAR. And last year he changed his name to Santino Mancuso. So I'll tend to refer to him also as Santino or Tino. But Santino, and he founded the Cosmobiology Institute with another famous person, a PhD mathematician and very, very famous computer scientist named Peter Neumann. Peter's about 92 these days, but back in the early 60s, he had just graduated from Harvard with a PhD in mathematics. And a lot of mathematicians back then went to work in this new emerging field of computers. So he worked on a lot of the math and stuff for the computers that we enjoy today. But Peter Neumann has also been interested in astrology since the 70s. And the mission of the Cosmobiology Institute is to assist with the development of astrology as an evidence-based discipline. In doing that, it holds regular meetings, monthly meetings, where people interested in astrological research, they can join the meeting in Zoom, talk about the research they want to do. They can get advice from me or also from Santino. Santino is so interested in this stuff that he went back to school and got a master's degree in statistics and data analysis. And the Cosmobiology Institute is sponsoring a conference next year in Nashville, April 24th on 26th, which will be devoted to recent results in scientific evidence-based astrology. And I contribute a lot of statistical analysis to things in astrology. And like I say, we discover some traditional beliefs in astrology work very well. Others we don't yet have evidence for. And then we sometimes find that astrology works in ways we don't expect when we apply statistical analysis to it. And we also learn things, for instance, like there are differences between squares and oppositions. An opposition is not simply a weaker version of the square, and a sextile is not simply a weaker version of the trine. So, you know, we verify some things and we discover new things at the same time.
And you sent me a paper that you had put together with a lot of these things, and I just noted some of the topics. One of them is that orbs work.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? And also that applying orbs when the aspect is coming together seems to have more of an impact than when they're moving apart. But what about orbs?
Well, the traditional orbs that most people use actually seem to work pretty well. There's a lot of statistical studies that have been done by a PhD retired mathematics professor. I think he is Swedish, named Dr. Kyösti Tarvainen. And he's done a lot of research into these things, statistical analysis of traditional rules of astrology. And he's published several papers in this peer-reviewed journal called Correlation. It's put out by the Astrological Association in Great Britain, but it's the only journal out there for peer-reviewed studies scientific studies done in astrology. And he found things like the orbs that most people are using, those seem to be kind of the best orbs to work, and applying seems to be stronger than separating, as many people have observed in their astrological practice. He and some other researchers, a good friend of mine, Vincent Gadbout, who taught mathematics in Canada for several years and also does astrological research. But studies he and Kiowa have done, they suggest that orbs may act sort of like an on-off switch. And that's not completely decided, because there's some other studies which show that as the orb gets smaller, the effect gets stronger. So, there are questions that arise where more studies have to be done. Does an orb simply just turn on and then it's at the same strength until it turns off, or does it actually get stronger and stronger as it gets closer and closer to being exact?
And how might you have a field of data to look at? How would you get your statistical sample to examine a theory like that, or is that too tricky a question?
Oh, well, I'd have to go back and look and see how Kiowa did it. But I can tell you about one of the studies, which off the top of my head, where the effect gets stronger as the orb gets smaller. And actually, these are two studies. A few years ago, a researcher, Dr. Johnson Holt, who's passed on, he did a study on mundane astrology. And he basically looked at conjunctions and oppositions between outer planets, Jupiter through Pluto. And then he went to an independent news site that has nothing to do with astrology. I think the name of the site was onthisday.com. And what he found out was that I think his criteria was that you had to have at least 2 outer planet conjunctions or oppositions. So if you had 2 or more than 2 occurring in a certain year, then either that year or the year before, you would get significantly more major news events. And this was a very well-crafted study, and it proved that there is something to mundane astrology. This website had nothing at all to do with astrology, but when the outer planets come into conjunction or opposition, we suddenly get more and more news events. And then as a follow-up study, Robert Curry, who for the past 5 years has been the editor of Correlation, he's taking a break from it for this next issue. But he did a follow-up study, and he showed that as those conjunctions or oppositions get closer to exact, you get even more events than you do when they're not so close to one another. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That kind of confirms that fits in with our traditional feeling or belief that orbs get stronger as they get smaller, rather than just being an on-off switch.
The other thing that really jumped at me was astrological signatures for bipolar and eating disorders. How would you even think to look for that? So, and David did that one, right?
Yeah, David or Santino did that one. And I was trying to hold up his book. Let's see, this says, The Astrologically of Bipolar Disorder, a Scientific Breakthrough. Now, it's kind of hard to describe some aspects of this study because David or Santino, he specializes in a very specialized form of harmonic astrology called vibrational astrology. And That takes a long time to describe, but just to give a taste of it. Yeah, just to give a taste of it. When the planets Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus are interacting with one another in certain harmonics, certain vibrations, that is what makes it more likely that you will be um, diagnosed as bipolar. And one of the great things about this study is important not only just for the topic he is looking at, but for the methodology he used. He followed a very, very rigorous procedure for statistical analysis and studies of this sort. He crossed every T, dotted every I. He was very meticulous about following standard procedures to the letter. And that means that he had one large group of people that he used to develop this model on. And then he had a second group of people that was used to see if the model worked. Sometimes you develop a model on one group, you try it on a different group, doesn't work at all. But the second group, what we call our verification cohort, it verified that his model worked. And that is what made this really an outstanding study. So there is a lot of interesting research, scientific research that is being done in astrology these days, and we're getting results.
These are sorts of things that I would imagine that most of my audience hasn't even considered as a possibility, which is why I wanted to ask. In this regard, where you have a YouTube channel, and where can people find you on YouTube? Because you go through mundane astrology, current events on your channel.
Yeah, I have just a little amateur YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you just search for my name, Christopher Benton, followed by astrology, you'll find it. I also have a web page. It's not a professional web page. It's just my own personal little web page, www.docbenton.com. And if you go there, it will look like as big a mess as my house before I clean things up. Because, as I said, it's not designed to be a professional web page. It's just my web page where I post lots of stuff and things I'm interested in. And you'll find a lot of astrological stuff there, and also some hidden links to things about me or other interests and rabbinic literature, ancient Jewish mysticism, stuff like that.
And one thing in our room, we have hardly any time left, but I know everyone's been sitting on their seats wanting to know, how in the world did you dance on stage with Ginger Rogers?
Someone had to do it.
Well, is this like a summer musical, a touring company? How did this happen?
When I was growing up, I was very uncoordinated, and but I would watch the dancers on these variety shows they had on TV when I was little, and I promised myself, I said, if anyone ever offers to teach me dance or ballet for free, I'll take them up on that. And the local dance teacher offered that for free back when I was in high school. And I wound up studying, ballet, modern dance, and tap. And suddenly I became very well coordinated and very good. I had summer scholarships with American Ballet Theater School in New York, scholarships with Harkness Ballet, Houston Ballet Foundation. And they would have summer musicals in Houston back in those days where they'd bring in big stars. They needed another dancer for their musical, so the choreographer called me up. And so I did Unsinkable Molly Brown with Barbara Eden and Mame with Ginger Rogers. And It's
That's
an
great.
incredible experience. After that, I moved to Austin. I injured my back. I had a whole series of back injuries. And so I had to shift my career from ballet to mathematics. It's like something bad happens in your life, you have to get a PhD in mathematics instead. Those are the breaks.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad you found the time to come chat with us. I've enjoyed this. I appreciate your time. And docbenton.com, correct? That's your site?
That's right. My students always called me Doc, and then the faculty started calling me Doc. So that's where
Great.
that came from.
And everyone else, I'm at empowermentunlimited.net and on YouTube, Professional Aquarian, and my mundane astrology is all over there as well. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing what plays out between now and next February. I have my bets. We'll see, and everyone be safe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.